Justin's super cool real estate news flash.
Welcome to this new YouTube series where I collab with different people that work in the real estate industry. This is our land specialist, Rob.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm happy to be here.
Welcome, Rob Sheehan. All right, so today we're going to ask Rob about the ins and outs of land real estate and the best ways to go about it. He's going to show us his expertise, and let's get into it. So first and foremost, Rob, how did you get started in land real estate, and what makes it different from selling residential?
So how I got started in selling land, I was going through like the same systems that we use here as real estate agents, making my daily phone calls. So I was calling the expired listings, the for sale by owners, just listed, just sold, my database. And I was calling the for sale by owners. This is probably October time, about 4 years ago or so. And I got a hold of a for sale by owner, spoke to them, had a really good conversation. And it wasn't a new for sale by owner. It was listed for about 3 weeks or so, and I didn't do any research into it, but was just talking to the owner of the property and wound up getting a listing appointment right there. So after doing the research on it, I saw it was a vacant piece of land, and I was like, all right, well, might as well just take the listing for it. Sent out the listing via DocuSign, so never met the owner, never did a presentation in person. So first of all, that was super easy, not having to spend like an hour trying to drive somewhere, going to go list something. It was just done via DocuSign. And wound up listing the property, put it on the market, and then within 2 days had about 5 cash offers on it. And then there were some of the buyers telling me that if I represented them, one, I could make double the commissions, but once the home is done being built, I could help them sell the new build property on the back end. So that's where the light bulb really turned on for me, because I'm thinking one phone call is now 3 commission checks right there. One phone call is 3 commission checks. And yeah, so that kind of like really got my wheels turning. I was like, hey, there might be something to this land thing. So over time, I would just started perfecting like different systems on like which landowners I would call, what areas I liked to call. And it's been like a learning process ever since. But I'll tell you, it's a lot of fun with land because every parcel is different. Everyone is going to be in a different area, different city. Each has different rules. So it's a lot of research that goes into it once you have the listing done, but it's never a boring day when you're selling land. So yeah, that's how I got started into it.
Dang, awesome. That's really fun, man.
Yeah, thank you, dude.
Okay, so land's a little bit different than residential real estate. And that one phone call leads you to 3 different deals. Yeah. What are some of the most common mistakes that buyers or sellers make during this type of process?
Very good question right there. So yeah, it is definitely a lot different than when coming to like selling residential real estate or commercial real estate. On our end as agents, one, it's a little bit different because we are not being influxed with the amount of buyers as we normally do with a house transaction. Usually the buyers that reach out to us is just going to be the investor that's calling, the developer to it, or maybe it might be a local neighbor for us. It's not like how we sell a residential home and we're doing open houses and a ton of like marketing and exposure to it. So that's another reason why I like land. It's a little bit more analytically driven, and it does work with my personality style a lot of just like, hey, let's bottom line this. We're gonna make the decision or not with it. It's not like how in the nicest way possible when we're showing buyers houses. We're like, hey, imagine if we take down this wall, you know what I mean? And envision this is where we have the pool. This is where little Johnny can play in the yard kind of a thing. And there's none of that with land. So that's a reason why I do like it. So some of the common mistakes that buyers and sellers make when it comes to land is going to be in the disclosure processes and the due diligence aspect. So a big area where most of the time on the seller's portion of it, the seller's side, is when lawsuits do arise, is because it's a lack of disclosing what they know about the property. So what that could be looking like is maybe if they know that the city has certain setbacks on what could or could not be allowed to be built there, what kind of zoning is allowed for the area for it, what kind of agricultural or livestock could be allowed to be raised there, even when it comes to like the size of the houses too. Sometimes that the sellers already get the permits all pulled for this, they realize they can't build their dream home and then try to sell it and not disclose that to the next buyer. So on the seller side, that's where it's going to be probably the number one area where they need to watch out for. On the buyer's end is making sure that they do all the research possible to satisfy themselves. So almost flipping the 180 degree is like, hey, let's not guarantee that the seller knows everything about the land, but who can I reach out to at the city or at the county to make sure that I cross the T's and that I dot the I's when it's coming to purchase this parcel right there. So, of those two things, investigations and disclosures, disclosing on the seller side are probably going to be the two most common areas, or really where we want to have like our spidey senses going. That
Gotcha. So land will have a lot different type of research for buyers sellers than residential will.
exactly. Just because, like on the residential side, as you know, we typically have an appraiser come in to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that the home is in good structure. We also have a home inspector that comes in and verifies of the property as well too. And also the buyers are taking a look at it. I would say a lot of times when people are buying land, they never even view the parcel in person. They would just buy it over the computer, make a phone call. So
Hmm.
it is a little bit different than when someone's purchasing a home for that reason, because usually when people purchase the home, the buyer walks in, they fall in love, they bring the family members in, make sure
Mm-hmm.
dad comes in, likes it,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. Bring in the home inspector. After the home inspection's done, then the appraiser comes in. So there's a lot more due diligence on the residential side versus the land. And same thing with the disclosures amounts to. With land, it's only a few pages. With, I mean, as you know, with buying a house, it's like 200 pages of paperwork. So
Yeah.
yeah, just a little bit different.
So right now, what are the trends that you're currently seeing in the market with land? Are things going up? Are they kind of stagnant? Are more parcels being turned over right now?
Very good question. So one thing that actually, there's two things that I've noticed pretty in the last 60 days or so. Number one is that infill lot. So if there's already like a cul-de-sac full of houses, and at the very end of the street, this one does not have a house built on it yet, but everything else around it already does. That's what we call an infill lot. So the infill lots, they are moving super quick right now. So that's all I've been really targeting this last few months as well too. And another thing that I have noticed, that's on one aspect of it. So the infill lots are moving very well. I have some larger parcels of land, 20, 40 acres up in the high desert. They're taking a long time to sell. So I have noticed with those larger ones, a lot of sellers are asking about subdividing. That's something that we could dive into in the future and make them into little bite-sized, smaller pieces to make it a little more attractive for the next buyer. But infill lots, they're moving quick right now. Number two is that there's a lot of sellers out there, people that own parcels of land that are looking to sell in the current moment. So it always seems that the end of winter time and then during the springtime is that's when the most land turns over. One, on coming on the market, but number two, on for it going and getting an acceptable offer and going into escrow. So how I'm spending my day to day right now is just trying to get as many listings as I can possible, because I know in 2, 3 months from now, boom, 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 they're going to be just turning over more and more and more. So yeah, that's kind of the insights of like what's happening with land at the current moment.
Nice. Why do you think the info lots are going so quick?
So I think that it's really, there's a lot of new developers coming into the marketplace right now, and
Mm,
once there's already a neighborhood set up, there's already the like kind of properties. Running in the permits makes it a lot easier because there's already the utilities pooled to the surrounding houses, so they don't need to worry about pulling a water meter 300 yards away from the nearest house. They only need to pull it 15 feet from the street.
mm,
Same thing goes with the electricity. So there's already a paved road going to it. There's already access already for the builders to be coming in and setting up shop there. So I think it's just becoming a let's go where the road is easy in a sense and duplicatable right there. So yeah, I think that's why it's turning over so quickly in the info lot side.
wow, man, that's some great insight. Love
Thanks,
that.
man. Yeah.
Now, with the different types of land that you're dealing with those infill lots and then
Yeah.
the big lots, what do you think are the biggest things that are affecting the prices of both of those?
Utilities is going to be the biggest thing. So to give you an example, so where we're shooting this right now, we're in Southern California. I'm sure as everyone knows, where we are in Chino Hills, about an hour and maybe 10 minutes north of us, there is a city called Pinion Hills in Phelan. So it's over by Victorville on your way to Vegas, kind of an area. What I have noticed in that area is that if there is a 2 acre parcel, okay, And if it has utilities just at the street, not pulled onto the actual parcel of land, but it's just at the street, the water meter and electricity overhead at the street, those will sell for $60,000. Now, if you take that same parcel, 2 acres again, too, same city on the other side of the street, and there's nothing of utilities nearby, it sells for $30,000.
Wow, half off.
Huge price difference.
Huge.
It is crazy, yeah. And to pool utilities, to run 100 yards in Hesperia, a few cities from where we're talking, we got a quote a few years ago. It was $30,000 to run 100 yards. So it makes a big difference if your parcel already lies on like a water main that has utilities nearby. Again, that kind of goes back to the point why a lot of people are looking at the infill lots is because those utilities have already been pooled. So that's going to be the biggest difference for it. With the larger parcels of land, it kind of goes back to the Costco effect I've noticed with that. So if we're buying 1 acre in Phelan, that's going to sell for $45,000. 2 acres sells for $60,000 if they're on the water main. 5 acres sells for $85,000. So you can see the 1 acre selling for 35, 45, but then 5 acres selling for 80. The math isn't mathing on it should be 90 and then 130. It's not mathing that way. So there's the Costco effect when it comes to selling land, and same thing for selling houses. If we're talking about a 5,000 square foot house in Chino Hills, might have a price per square foot of $273, but we take a small 900 square foot house in Los Serranos, and that price per square foot is $600 because you're buying like into the city and for the area. So there's also the Costco effect when it comes to houses as well too. But I noticed that with land. So yeah, if we're talking 20, 40 acres in Pinion Hills, Phelan, it might be selling for $130, $150. So that's why people are coming and asking, like, should I subdivide it and make it into a 5 acre lot? Because that will sell for $80,000, and then we could have 4 $80,000 parcels. Well, that definitely beats the $150,000 of what it's worth. So, I hope that answers the question for it right there.
I think we got a lot more insight than we thought.
Yeah. I'll go in analytical mode all day long and all this. Yeah. This is my forte, my specialty. I love land to death, so I can talk about it for hours. Yeah.
He passed algebra.
Yeah. Algebra 2. Yeah. I cheated my way through it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Now we're gonna get into some questions for the buyers. Speaking of those things that buyers should have researched into, what are maybe your 3 key things that they should get into?
Number 1 is going to be seeing and verifying with utility companies where the utilities are. Because if you're a buyer and someone posts on the multiple listing service or on Zillow as a real estate agent, they don't always have that verified of where the utilities are. So it's still always going to fall on the buyer's responsibility to verify those aspects of it. So that's going to be number 1. Number 2 is have your financing in order already. So a lot of times people are writing up offers, they don't have the cash in hand, or if they're going to be getting a loan, they don't have the pre-approval done already. And if it's a good piece of land, it will sell within 2 to 3 days with another cash buyer. So that would be a huge thing if you're looking to be purchasing any land in the near future. Have your ducks in a row that if you're wanting to purchase, you're able to purchase. It's a little bit different than when we're buying a house. Like when we're in an escrow period for buying a house, we have a 30-day window. So if we need to shop lenders, even though we're not supposed to, quote unquote, in between, you have the option to do that. You have 30 days. But like with land, usually the escrow periods is between like 10 and 18 days. So that's super quick, and they want to make sure that the deal will get done. So having your ducks in a row in regards to that would be, probably the biggest thing you could be doing. And yeah, that's all I could think of. It would probably be the 2 most critical things with that. One thing I would say too is don't be afraid to ask your buyer's agent, or if you're just working with the seller directly, just to get more clarity on questions as well too. If something doesn't look right in the disclosures that you get, feel free to, I would say you have permission almost to dive further into the ask for further clarity, get it verified by the county or by the city as well too, because you don't want to be going into something blind at the end of the day. So I would just say permission to dive deeper into any questions you guys have about it.
Yeah. And just call him because he'll fill you in on all that. You don't need anybody else.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, speaking of buyers doing their own research, should they go and verify that the land is suitable for their intended use, or is that something you do as their agent?
Yeah, it's a very good question Justin's bringing up right now, and I appreciate you asking this. No, this is something where it's going to be on the buyer's responsibility. So on my end, I'll provide as much knowledge as I know, or be like, here's the city's phone numbers if you need help with any of that. But for you, if you're the buyer for it, I want to make sure that you're satisfying yourself on making sure you're getting every question answered yourself. Because if you and I are having a conversation and you ask me 10 questions for me to verify, but I only write down 8, well, I'm not doing you the right service for that at the end of the day. So it is going to be one of those things that it will fall on you. I'm not going to say delegate it to you to do the work, but I will be there to support you and help make sure you get connected with the right people to make sure you're satisfied in the questions that get answered for you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid. Just do your research. He'll guide you in the right direction as to
Yeah.
where they're going, what to look into. Don't be afraid to ask questions and put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You don't want to get something that you can't utilize for what you are buying the thing for. So now, talking all this money, not everyone has 80 grand to pop out of they're behind their back wallet.
Yeah.
So what are some of the financing options that people go through that may be different from residential listings as far as like purchasing these?
Great question right there. And it's something that's very important, especially in the market that we're in right now. It seems like everywhere around that people are kind of, holding their purse a little bit closer and stuff. We're watching where we're spending our money. So there's a few different options for us. So the one and most common one is going to be a seller carryback. So I would say 98% of the time, the current owner of the land does not have a mortgage on the land. They own it free and clear. Okay, so what a seller carryback looks like is, let's say we have Sally, the seller, right here. She owns this piece of land out in Chino Hills. Then we have Bob, the buyer, over here. Well, Bob will make the intent to purchase the land, and what Sally is going to be acting like is the bank. So Bob and Sally will come to an agreement that I'll pay you X amount of money per month for so many months, and I'll be buying the land from you on a monthly basis, essentially. So that would be the number one most common way, is going to be like the seller carryback with Sally, the seller, then Bob, the buyer, right there. And they would work all those things out. Number two is actually getting a loan from a lender. So these are not as common. It's not as common as like going to like your nearby like Wells Fargo or going to like your credit union on getting a mortgage. So I've noticed it's only a few particular, one, banks or credit unions, but then two, just other outside lenders that specialize with land loans. But it is common. I will say that they do generally cost more money in regards for an interest rate and for an appraisal. So last year I closed one in May time. I was representing the seller, so I only saw it from the perspective of the seller side. But the buyer got a loan on the piece of land up in Oak Hills, about $200,000 loan. The appraisal for it, one, was about $1,600, $1,600, which is crazy because you get an appraisal for a house and it's usually like $400 to $600.
Yeah.
Why the piece of dirt costs so much more? I don't know, but like,
More.
yeah, but there's like no. I mean, it's hard to find a land lender. Interest rate was about 9%, and then on like the residential side, if you're buying a house, interest rates at that time was about 7.5%. So it is a little bit higher, and they owe all the money back within 2 years after purchase. So that is another common thing too when it comes to land loans. They might amortize the loan over 20 years, but they're going to have a balloon payment, so you owe all the money back within 2 to 3 years, because what the lender's perspectives typically, and don't quote me on this, I'm not an expert on the lending side, but they just want to make sure that the home gets built, you do a refinance of it, and they get paid off on that land loan right there. So that's why they have the balloon payment set up in such a direction like that. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
Just how quick that money goes. It might be a cheaper purchase, but it seems like initially there's just so much more output on your dollar.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild, isn't
So
it?
a lot of people are thinking about buying land. It's not as cheap as you think it is.
Yeah. Well, that's like a common thing that I hear like right now too, especially with like people like in our age and demographic, is that, I'll just go buy a piece of land and build a house on it. And you're like, yeah, you could do that, but if you don't know what you're doing or know how much it's going to cost, I mean, it really is not a ton cheaper than buying a current home already built up already. it's really not that much cheaper. And then you have to factor in like now you're getting all the permits, or if you're going to be hiring a general contractor doing all that, you're paying him all that extra funds to go do that for you.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, I would say half the time it's not cheaper to actually buy the piece of land and build your own house on it. Now it might be cheaper if you buy a fifth wheel and a piece of land out in like Joshua Tree and we go do that, sure. But that's going to be one commute on coming back down the hill every single day. But yeah, it is one of those things like where I've noticed that like yeah, you have the option to do that, but the people that are developers, they usually have pretty good systems down. They've done it a lot. They have like better rates on prices than like you and
Mhm.
I would get if we were going to go to Home Depot and try to buy all the supplies to build a house. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but I have noticed like our generation, like the people that are like, oh, 23 to 30 or so, they keep thinking like, oh, I'm just going to buy this piece of land and then just build my house on it. I'm like, yeah, but like 9 times out of 10, you got to buy the land cash. So like, we're going to get the 400 grand from for that. And then you're going to spend another $600,000. Yeah, you get a construction loan on it. But I mean, just for the stress and everything too, like stronger than me in that sense. I'd just rather go buy something and have that take 30 days versus building it myself. But
Yeah.
to each their own.
So would you say it's more for people who just want the control and like the customization of that piece of property?
Yeah, if they want to go down that route, that would be like perfectly suited for them. So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. If they, that's definitely like one buyer that would really benefit from building their own kind of building their own kind of property by buying the land.
All right, now settlers, your portion of this conversation that you've been waiting for. What are some steps that they can take that will increase the value of their land?
Very good question right there because there's definitely a few of them. So we've already kind of touched on this a little bit on if the utilities are not pooled to the property or at the front of the street yet, you could do that. Now, it's probably not going to be the highest ROI of your money. It takes a long time for you to do so, but that is an option for it. Another option could be if you have a bigger parcel, is going to be subdividing the land into smaller parcels. So you could talk to the county or to the city in regards for the steps to doing that. Usually that just entails getting a surveyor out, making up the new parcel numbers. Every city and county is going to be different, so don't quote me on it. But that only generally takes about 30 to 60 days to happen, typically. Um, Another aspect for it as well too is if you want to just get a survey done, or if you're in a certain area where it does require getting a percolation test done to see the soil level and how much water and what minerals are there. That is a huge area for like where we are out in like the Bloomington Colton area up in the hills. Percolation tests, they cost between $3,000 and $6,000, but at the end of the day it could increase if your property passes it anywhere from 10 to 15K. It only takes a couple weeks for that to happen. So you're kind of like doubling your money in that
Dang.
sense. Same thing goes for getting surveys done, grading for it. All those requires permits that you have to go down to the county for, but it does make your land a little bit more enticing at the end of the day. Anything that is coming about doing upgrades just to the raw land, it is going to be time consuming. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
lie about that. So you really need to be looking back because if you're making $500,000 a year, do you really want to spend 60 days trying to save or make an additional 25,000? Well, probably not if it's taken 5 days a week for you to be doing that on
Mm-hmm.
just to accomplish it for a couple of months. So you need to start looking back at it. I always recommend to most people like let's break down the numbers and take a look at this. So if you have a piece of land that you own, just go ahead and send Justin or I the APN number. We will run the analysis for you of what you could sell it for right now with just the raw land. And if we did some kind of upgrades to it as well too, what the different prices would be. Now, generally, I would say is that the sellers, once they get the two reports for it, will just sell the land with it being the vacant land because the juice is really not worth the squeeze for most of the time
Mm.
when they're doing that different kind of upgrades to the parcels. So every seller is different. Every seller has different time they have throughout the day. But what I've noticed that most of the times that sellers, they just wind up selling the vacant land how it is because the ROI of their time is going to be way better than if they were going to be doing grading or some other kind of permit pulling needed.
Yeah. So you're saying it's really just determined on the person. If they really want to squeeze every last dollar,
Yep.
do your due diligence. Again, due diligence
Yep. Amen.
about the math that's going to go behind it into actually making sure that when you do these things, they turn a profit. They don't
Yeah.
just waste all your time for no reason.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Awesome. Love that.
Yep.
Okay. So increasing price of the land.
Mhm.
Now, increasing price is great But how do we make this land more attractive to
Mm.
get people to actually want to buy just this vacant lot?
That's a very good question right there too. So, number one, it still always is going to be going back from what we just previously just discussed as well too. But we need to really put on like our buyers caps in this kind of analogy right now. Yep, there you go. You look dapper. Hats on backwards, but we're fine. There we go. Yeah. You don't have two opportunities to make a first impression.
Mm.
Okay, so when it goes back to that property in Oak Hills I was talking to you about, where the buyers they got a loan on it last year, that property was a fun one, was a hoot the whole way around. So there's never a dull moment with that one. But the reason why I'm saying that is because there was like bundles of like chicken wire everywhere on the land. There was like trash. There was just they had a semi truck, so it was just like the cargo thing for the semi truck, all rusted out, like sitting on the ground on this 5 acre parcel, whatever it was in Oak Hills. So you drive by it, like the seller already had a water meter on it, which is good. It already had electricity on it, which is great. It already had a percolation test on it. Like this thing was phenomenal if you could sell a piece of land. But you go and you drive, you get inside the gate, and there's like this beaten down old cargo container, all rusted out. There's chicken wire everywhere, just bundled up, and like looks like it's gonna be a tumbleweed and final destination yourself with it. But it's if they just had those things picked up, it would have been so much more attractive to the buyer at the end of the day. So even when it comes to like overgrown trees or just bushes that are super ugly in a sense, like just there's small little tweaks where it goes back, like you don't have two opportunities to make a first impression. So if I were the seller, I would just kind of have that perspective is like if I was viewing this land for the first time, what would I like about it and what would I not like about it? And then, of course, like highlight the areas that you do like about it, like the water main. I mean, think if like they would got rid of all the bushes and stuff surrounding it, so you don't have to like search in the ground for 5 minutes trying to find out where the water main was. What if you had like a stake right there, and then you had some nice shrubs around it or something, where it like really highlights it well. And the areas that you don't like, then you just make sure that the ones that are better that they get highlighted more in a sense. So yeah, that would probably be the best way of doing that.
That's a great answer. So you could either have a gold bar that smells and looks like dookie,
Yep.
and you can have a trash bag that's just shining, looking like gold, and everyone's gonna pick that shiny
That's
trash
right.
bag.
Yep.
Okay, so going back to due diligence, this is like our key thing for both buyers and
Yeah,
sellers. But
absolutely.
for sellers, what are some documents and legal considerations that they can do to make sure that this process goes smoothly?
So the biggest one is going to be revolved around trusts. Okay, TRUSTS. So in regards for if you, the seller, is still alive, or someone that's inheriting the trust at the end of the day, as well too. So this goes doesn't matter if you own land or a house. Always put your properties into a trust. Just because you don't have to go through a probate process, it's not going to be costing you thousands of dollars of attorney fees and agent fees and just everything that goes along with it. But one of the things I most commonly see happen is one that properties are not, number one, into a trust, or number two, that they don't have the trust paperwork if the current sellers are still alive. And that definitely just holds up the escrow process for a long period of time. When it comes to if you're inheriting a parcel of land from a deceased parent that had the trust or did not have the trust as well too, it's just not having those documents either recorded with the city, gotten from the city, or just attainable to you right now. So all those things hold up the escrow process. Buyer could walk at the end of the day. So I would say those are going to be some of the biggest items that they need to be kind of getting their ducks in a row prior to getting it listed. Would be some of the biggest things right there. Also, if any kind of like past surveys or anything that's been done on the piece of land too, keep the receipts of that, because that does come into like prior knowledge that should be disclosed to the buyers at the end of the day when purchasing a property. I believe here in California, don't quote me on it. There is certain laws, and every state's going to be different, so you need to go ahead and research in regards for what your state and what your area requires for your MLS board, as well as for your disclosures as well too. Is there's certain amount of times if you have a receipt that's a material fact that has to be disclosed to the buyer at the end of the day. So every area is going to be a little bit different. Do your own research for what your local laws require for that. but yeah, that'd be like another thing too, especially on the seller's perspective, that they should have like those items handy prior to listing, so they
Mm,
don't wind up find themselves in a lawsuit a few years down the road. So yeah.
beautiful. Love that. Again, not legal advice, um, just experience, and take that as you will. We're not responsible for any of this. Now, we love deals. We love when they land. We
Mm-hmm.
love when they finally go through. But as we know, in residential real estate, some things get in the way, either on the buyer's end, the seller's end, inspection goes wrong,
Yep.
appraisal messes everyone's numbers up. What are some of the common mistakes, or not mistakes, but what are some of the common things that get in the way that cause a land deal to fall through?
Very good question right there. So, number one is going to be whether the zoning is going to be suitable for what the end buyer is looking to be doing with this. So, let's say they want to build a 5,000 square foot house. The zoning requirements for the city in that particular area, maximum house size they could build is 3,800 square feet. So, that will be something either alongside with the zoning, or whether they want to have a certain size ADU or certain kind of agriculture on there. That kind of always goes back to the zoning side of it. That's going to be probably the most common reason, is that the buyers kind of execute the goal that they wanted to at the end of the day. Number two reason why it falls out is because of the natural hazard disclosure report. So you might have a vacant piece of land, happens all the time. We're in the middle of the high desert, and for some reason it's in a flood zone. And you're like, it just never rains up here, never seen it, but it winds up happening to be in a flood zone. And I mean, we see it down here in Chino Hills. Like, we're in a high fire area for it. There's some areas that are not getting fire insurance anymore as well too. So that will even go back to like the land. I have a parcel right now listed here in the canyon of Chino Hills, and that's what a sign call called me last week and asked. He's like, "Is this going to fall into like a high fire area once I'm done building the house?" So those are going to be another reason why, probably one of two of the most common reasons why a deal won't close is going to be going back to that natural hazard disclosure report as well too.
Mm,
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, those natural hazards, man, they sneak up on you.
it's weird.
Those
Yeah,
random zoning areas that you just touch a little bit of it and you need it. You need the papers, and like you said, with insurance right now,
yep,
man, unfortunate.
yeah. I have a weird one right now. So I have a few parcels of land listed out in a city called Paris. It's about a 2 hour drive from Los Angeles, and there's a natural spring on the land. And it's weird. So like when it rains, the natural spring, it like lifts up all the dirt, and then it like spouts with water after for like a few weeks. And then it'll like go back down, but it's only after it rains.
Whoa.
And it's been raining in California, so we're here in the wintertime. I didn't know anything about this, but I get a call from one of the buyers and buyer's agent showing the parcel of land. I was up on a trip a few weeks ago, and they were calling me about it, saying like, "There's this huge puddle of water here now, and like, what is up with this?" So I called the owners of it. He's like, "Oh yeah, there's a spring underneath the land, and when it
Huh.
rains, this always happens." So in my head now, I'm like, "Oh, that's gonna be fun when a perk test happens. It's gonna be fun when it comes to disclosures," because I didn't know anything about that. So like, my butt's safe. But like, what if the seller knew about that?
Mm.
Obviously, he did. But what if he didn't disclose it? If we entered it into the escrow process, like, so it's again like every day it's a little bit different with land. A new situation comes up. It's always something like new and fun and exciting to research. So yeah, that's keeps you young in this business.
Keeps you on your toes is what it
Yeah, oh yeah,
does.
for sure. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Now the fun stuff for the investors. What are the key factors that make land a good investment?
Well, number one is whatever God made of land, that's all that's going to be staying right there. So it is very much a uh, like supply and demand issue we're seeing with land. Like, if we're looking and we're talking like downtown Beverly Hills, there's not a lot of areas you can be building anymore versus like if we're talking about the high desert. So whatever God built of it, that's all that's going to be like remaining at the end of the day. So another side of it too is I've just noticed, especially since the last recession, that a lot of land has done extremely well in appreciation. So
Mm.
it's different than houses, different algorithms, different for every city and every even kind of zoning of land it breaks down into. But I definitely have noticed that there was people buying land at like an auction sale or just after the recession for $8,000-9,000, and now we're listing the parcels of land for 350K out in Paris. Like that's the ones in Paris I was talking about. They bought it for an auction at $500 or something. And now it's
Wow.
like, yeah, it's being listed for 200K. So it's like, it is like extremely weird. So I don't want to say like, hey, we're praying for a recession kind of a thing, but I got $500. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'll wait a few years after too. So another side that I like about the land is just not as there's not as much competition as it. So for you, like the investor at the end of the day, if you really know what you're doing on the building process, you know how to talk to the county, you know how to get the permits done, you know how to talk to your GCs, your general contractors, and do all that, the competition is not going to be as heavy as someone that's just looking to do like a fix and flip for a deal or a buy and hold for a rental property. So you could really knit yourself into this, kind of like what we've talked about in the beginning of the people that are looking on like the cul-de-sacs for the infill lots. You could really niche yourself into doing that. Like you have a very good career and just have a very good ROI at the end of the day.
Going back to subdividing land, what are some of the things investors should look into when they're getting ready to subdivide or like reutilize the land?
Very good question right there. So probably the best thing you could be looking at and really identifying is like what is your target area for the acreage size that you want. So if we're taking it back to the high desert, the Phelan Pinion Hills area, remember in the intro, we're talking about the 1 acre parcels we're selling for 45,000. The 2 acre parcels we're selling for 60. If they have like the water on the street, the 5 acre selling for 85. Well, you'll want to find an area there of what is your like best ROI for the time that you're going to be allotted into this. Like if you're taking 20 acre parcel, if you could subdivide it into 21 acre parcels, well, you're going to be making a ton of money doing that. But sometimes the city only allows you to do 2 subdivisions for one current APN number, for one current parcel of land. So you'll need to do that back end research and see. But you'll want to be looking at is like where you're going to be getting your best ROI at the end of the day. Now, every city is going to be a little bit different on what the requirements that they do have. Sometimes it's not like Pinion Hills doesn't even fall into a city, so you had to go to the county and talk about that as well too when it comes to this like subdividing portions of it. So um, yeah, I would say like find like where your demographic area is of what you want to subdivide into, and just make sure that there's going to be one buyers at the end of the day for it, and then two is just going to be allowed by the city. So yeah, that's going to be you are creating a solution for people that they didn't even know that they needed in a sense. That's what we're looking to be doing with this. So we're filling the need. People will really like the 2 acre lots up there in Phelan. So we'll buy the 20 acre parcel, subdivide that 10 times. So now we have 2 of the 10 acre lots. And we'll go ahead and just give the solution for the basically the problem that they didn't know that they had, which was just a lack of those things.
All right, Rob. Final question. Been
Mm-hmm.
loving having you here. Been loving having all the insight.
Yeah.
Now, what are some red flags when investing in undeveloped land that people should look out for?
Is if you're buying a property without getting a title insurance policy at the end of the day. Okay. So this happened to me earlier this year. We're in the year 2025. I had a owner reach out to me just via email saying I want to list this parcel of land. So haven't played time before. So I sent them a listing agreement. Listing got signed. Bada bing, bada boom. Get an offer on the property. We go into the escrow period here in California. Title runs a title search of it and realize that the quote unquote owner is dead. So someone fraudulently is now signing the DocuSigns, now signing the paperwork, all this stuff. So you have the ability to like purchase a property. You could do like a private party sale where they just transfer the deed to you. And you think as you the buyer or even you the seller, like everything is going as planned because we have like written documents and this and that. But this is like where it comes up, like why you really should always trust like your real estate agent. Number two is going to be your title, and number three is going to be like your escrow company. No set order for those areas to be trusting in, but for this like particular property that we're talking about with the fraudulent owner of it, that got caught during the escrow process. So then that buyer did not spend the $80,000 or 60 grand, whatever the parcel of land cost, and was just kind of throwing your hands up. What do I do next? Kind of a thing. That did not happen. Like the escrow got stopped, police got involved, yada yada. So it was a thing where like, hey, that's a red flag. Now, at the end of the day, it always kind of is a red flag when someone just emails, like for any real estate agents out there, for any investors, buyers, and stuff. Someone never just emails you right out of the blue, like, hey, I have this parcel of land. Do you want to list it? Do you want to buy it? Always kind of have like the hairs of your neck stick up it's happened with me in this situation too, but I've also sold dozens of other parcels of land where it's happened that same way, where someone just reaches out, never talked to them on the phone, never met up with them in person. So it is a calculated risk you need to have. But that's where it really goes back to the systems that we establish as the real estate agents, where we have the title company that gives the title insurance policy. We have the escrow that's going to verify getting notaries done for making sure it's the right person that's actually signing off on the piece of the land. So have a good team around you, and then it would eliminate a lot of the red flags that would come up.
Now, how can a buyer going into this transaction avoid even getting that deep into it? Like before they sign any documents, just looking at this piece of land, talking to you as their agent, hey, something's fishy. What steps could we take to avoid having to spend all this money and time?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the first thing is looking at like who the current owner is and if the property is already into a trust. One thing that the current seller could have done already is requested a prelim from the title company. That would then have the title company starting to reach out to the current owner of it. So you as the buyer could ask your buyer's agent, hey, do you know if the seller has done a prelim already on the property? This is prior to you ever seen the land, writing an offer on it, and your buyer's agent would be able to verify that for you and reach out to the seller's agent as well. So that would probably be the first thing. Number two, if you're looking at like the MLS postings for it, if you're seeing like house, info lot, house, but they're saying that small info lot is zoned like general commercial, but there's nothing commercial about it in the area. Well, that can like kind of like raise a little bit of a red flag in your mind too. So there does come like to be like that like common sense aspects, which again, like we never want to just rely on that. We want to, of course, do our due diligence at the end of the day. Um, yeah, it's just one of those things. I think it's like just like trusting your gut at the end of the day. If something doesn't seem right, like dive into that a little bit
Mm.
further.
Love that. You've given us a lot of great insight. Is there anything else you want to just tell us as a land specialist agent? You want to tell the potential buyers and sellers out there that maybe we haven't gone over? Anything you just want to fill in, shout out?
No, I mean, there's first and foremost, it's a huge opportunity to be here right now. So I thank you just for being able to talk and get the good knowledge out to everyone. So I appreciate that. But no, as of right now, I think the questions you had were perfect. I mean, they kind of hit every base of it. I'm sure it's going to be one of those things at 3 in the morning, like, oh, that was a question I should have brought up. How
Happens
it
all the time.
always works out, kind of a thing. But yeah, if you ever like for any sellers, buyers, other real estate agents out there that want to dive into this, if you want to like ever ask any questions, reach out to Justin and I, and we'll be able to get those questions answered for you. So like we're here looking just to help people at the end of the day. So if you have anything that we did not touch on over this interview as well too, just reach out to us and we'll make sure the question gets answered.
Beautiful. This is my good friend Robert Sheehan. We both work here at Century 21 as real estate agents here, realtors. It's been a great time having you here, Rob.
Yeah.
So don't forget, like, subscribe, and keep following this channel because I will be doing more collab videos with your lenders, your appraisers, your maybe a commercial specialist agent, your inspectors, construction guys, just getting you all the information you need to feel very prepared into going into this transaction. Obviously, that's something we do and that's
Yeah.
our part of our job. But we know there's some people that are hesitant to even talk to people like us.
Yeah.
And let me just help you understand where we're coming from and sharing some of this information with you. Of course, this is what we study, this is what we do. We're going to have this all bundled up. It's going to be information overload for you, but there's some smart people out there, and we just want to build that trust and connection with you all. So, Rob, it's been having a great time having you here,
Yeah.
man. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay learning.
Thanks,
See ya.
guys. See ya.